Okay, so often throughout the course, we're going to want to make graphs of our models. So in this case, we're going to want a graph of population over time. So it's really easy to make graphs in Excel, and this short video is just about making really basic graphs in Excel. There are lots of different options and formatting and ways to make it pretty, but we're really just concerned with a basic graph today. So I've opened up the affine population model. Remember, this is the one where the population's either growing exponentially or declining, in which case the population either has R positive for growth or R negative for decline. And then there's some intervention happening where we're either adding members to the population, which is stocking, which means a positive value for the parameter A, or we're harvesting members from the population, and that means we would have a negative value for the parameter A. And the way we've set the spreadsheet up, I'm going to show the formulas briefly. Remember, we put the parameters in their own cells, so the growth rate is in B3, and we referred to that parameter using $, so the location wouldn't change. Same goes for the parameter A. A was in B4, that's the thing that's getting added or subtracted every year from the population, and we didn't want Excel to change that address. Okay, I want to graph more than 8 years worth of my population, so I want to copy my formulas down now a little further, and I just wanted to show you that you can actually do that so that you can do them both at once. You don't have to do one at a time. And the way to do that is to use the thick cross to left click and select both, the bottoms of both columns. And then with the fill handle, you can pull it down and graph as many years as you want. So that's 19 years. Let me do one more just to make it a nice round number. 20 years worth of population. Now, when you go to graph this, you want to select everything that you want to appear on the graph, including the column headings. Right? Sometimes if you don't include the column headings, Excel will get confused and think that the first line of your data or projections is the column headings. So you want to avoid that just by selecting T and the population, and then scrolling down till you get all 20 years. You can scroll back up. So everything that's going to appear on the graph is highlighted. I use the thick cross, left click, selected everything, and then release that. All right, so I want to go to Insert, Charts. I'm selecting the one with the dots on it. Those are scatter plots. And the one that I'll prefer is the scatter plot connected with straight lines. So I just click on that, and there's our first graph. All right, so in year 0, population was 100. In year 12, the population was about 339. So notice that on the graph, if you hover over one of the points, the values pop up. And that's sometimes really useful when you're trying to figure out particulars for a point that's on the graph. All right. So that is all fine and good. The title matches the column heading for B6 or population. I had changed that to just POP for pop in a previous iteration of the spreadsheet. So that for you would look like a P of T, I'm guessing at this point, but it could be anything. Notice that we have this Add Chart Element drop down. I'm going to use that now to include axis titles. So I go to axis title, primary horizontal. That axis title I want to be time in years. A couple of different ways you can type this in. I'll say time in years since, well, I don't have a year for this, I'm just making stuff up, so I'll say since beginning. Not great grammar, but it'll do for the example. Then I want to do axis title on the vertical axis, think I can just type it into the formula bar and it'll appear after I hit enter. Let me just say this is the population of cranes. Hit enter. Right, so two different ways of getting the axis titles, but that makes the graphs a little bit more descriptive. So if you're referencing an earlier graph and you haven't seen it in a while, then you know immediately what it is supposed to represent. I can also change this to P of t, and that updates automatically on the graph. Because we've set this up in a smart way, any change in the parameter values, not only is it instantly going to be reflected in the population column, it'll be instantly reflected on the graph itself. That is really nice to have. So if I change the growth rate, say, to a rate of decline, let's say minus 20%, and I change the stocking number to 12, all of those changes get immediately reflected in the graph, and we could see that under those conditions our population would be about 60 20 years later. So those are just the basics of the kinds of graphs that we'll create in here and how we'll use them. This is about the extent of how fancy I would expect you to be able to make the graph. You're always welcome to make it look better, choosing colors, and there's lots of different options to play with. But a basic scatter plot connected by straight lines with axis titles is about as far as I would expect you to go for mastery when you get assessed on this. And that's going to do it for this video. Thanks.